Warning! This review will contain spoilers. I'm not going to filter the spoilers. There's a lot I want to show you, a lot I want to talk about that includes in-game content and important spoilers. They're in this video. Also, this is a very M-rated game with a crap ton of gore and just bad stuff, so if you're a kid, don't watch. Also, just forewarning, I played in HDR, and so I actually tricked Shadowplay into recording some clips in HDR because I needed to show some of the bugs and things I encountered. And so there's going to be a couple clips in here that look pretty freaking jank. Not much I can do about it. Let's get in to my Doom Eternal review. I can't breathe in here. It's getting really foggy. Someone help me.
Okay, yes, I know that's Doom 2016's soundtrack, but Bethesda doesn't actually have the Doom Eternal soundtrack available for me to use. They don't even have it available to download with the Collector's Edition. So cut me a break. Screw the cool intro.
Doom Eternal might be the perfect story shooter, but I also see how it's not going to be for everyone. That's a little weird. I'm super stoked about this, and we're going to be checking it out. Before we get there, we got to unbox this Collector's Edition. This did not actually get to me in time to actually start playing on launch day because Amazon is prioritizing, essentials and things like that for shipping. And so instead of getting delivered by Amazon on release day like it was supposed to, it got dropped off at UPS. And so we're opening this a few days later. Okay, thank goodness the actual Collector's Edition is not that big. That was a big box. We're now down to 3 nested boxes. Look at this badass box though. Doom Eternal Collector's Edition. Alright, I'm pretty stoked. Now, Bethesda has already come out and clarified that the actual Doom Eternal soundtrack is not present in this Collector's Edition. Obviously, it was done in time for the game, but for the licensing or something to do with how they wanted to release it for the Collector's Edition, they did not get to finish it in time, and so we will be given download links to the lossless copy later on. Ooh, hello. Right on top here, we've got a cassette tape. It says Doom and Doom Eternal official soundtracks on here. It does come with the redeem code to get the key or to get the soundtracks, which they will be sending me later. We'll have to pop in and see what's actually on the tape itself. Got the Doom Eternal Steelbook case. This thing is gorgeous. Of course, just has a paper key inside, or paper CD for the key inside, but that's fine. This Steelbook is awesome. Got the Mark of the Doomslayer. Oh, so a little concept art book and lore book. Nice soft binding. Really sick. Now this I don't even want to open. I guess this is like a mini poster. The whole thing comes out. Jesus Christ. Yes, look at this thing. This is phenomenal. Smells like plastic. Less phenomenal. Now there's like adjustments to fit my big head. Oh my god. It's actually really cool to wear. I don't even know if you can hear me. I am the Dooms. I need a weapon now. Ba 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 ba. Jesus. Okay. There is no ventilation in there. Whatever. Hair was already a mess. No ventilation at all, but that's fine. This thing is awesome. Alright, we're going to talk some of the technical stuff about this game. So for context, I played Doom Eternal on my main production PC. So it has a Threadripper 3970X processor and an RTX Titan graphics card. Completely overkill, but it was still a brilliant experience, and my processor had so many threads that if I turned on full stats to show like all the thread usage and things like that, it actually ran off the screen on my ultra wide, which is pretty insane. I played it on an Asus ultra wide, a ProArt PA34 VC, which was 3440 by 1440, 100 hertz, and my main playthrough, not the footage that you're seeing for most of this video, but my main playthrough was in HDR. I was of course using the Vulkan renderer. I did actually turn resolution scaling on just so that I made sure I maintained my lock 100 hertz with adaptive sync, and for the most part it never really needed to drop resolution anyway, but I kept that, and it was always 100% 100 hertz locked refresh rate, which is pretty cool. Speaking of HDR though, since I was playing in it, I had some issues. There was some weird issue where whenever I closed the game, it would disable HDR in Windows, or do so without me knowing, even if I had HDR enabled in Windows manually. And so every time I relaunched the game, epilepsy warning here, close your eyes if you're sensitive to this, there was this massive flicker. Epilepsy warning over. So a couple weird issues with HDR, and I'll talk about that more in a moment. It's a beautiful game if you're interested in the actual visual tech, because it is a significant upgrade, especially on consoles, over Doom 2016. I'll point you to Digital Foundry's tech breakdown because they did a fantastic job. I did want to note that if you do want statistics for frame rates and things like that to use the internal stats, there's a lot it can give you. You don't need to worry about not having what you want, but using other overlay programs such as RTSS, through Afterburner or whatever, can actually hurt performance, which is a little weird, but whatever. And the loading times were incredibly fast. I was playing off an NVMe drive, but it was like pretty much always at least 80% of the way done as soon as it started loading in the first place, which is pretty cool. Now, in that Digital Foundry video, John had actually managed to run it at 720p and get 500 FPS at one point, and usually around 200 or 300 FPS. And he mentioned that he was CPU bottlenecked in that instance, and that there was a goal of the developers to be able to hit 1000 FPS at one point. And I thought, okay, I have some extra CPU leg room, maybe I might be able to do that. But even cranking it to 720p medium with adaptive resolution, I could not hit even the frame rates John was getting. I think I just have too many threads, and you need something that's super fast but fewer threads, but not too few threads. I don't know. Hitting 1000 FPS ain't gonna happen, but I struggled to get over 200 FPS, which was a little weird, but didn't matter because again, I was mainly playing on a locked 100 hertz and it felt fantastic. If you're curious what Doom is all about, it is a cyberpunk first-person shooter. It is Doom. It is tied to all the Doom games going back to the 90s. You're the Doom Slayer or the Doom guy, and you survived some big fights from the previous games, and probably Doom 1 and 2, and were taken in by these group called the Sentinels, which were kind of like angels, but also not. And the Sentinels gave you power and strength and abilities, which you then used to fight for them, defeating titans and demons and things like that, while they harvested what's called Argent energy, basically taken from souls as well as another energy source to power their entire existence. And apparently at some point before Doom 2016, Argent energy was used on Earth. This brought all the demons to Earth, and that's when 2016 they woke you up from your slumber to fight and beat the demons, and now you're angry again and taking them all out because you're just filled with so much rage you must rip and tear. There's actually, especially in this game specifically, there's actually a lot of similarities to Halo's storyline in the newer games, Halo 4 and Halo 5. As well as the actual waking up when you need me part from Halo Combat Evolved. You get woken up in your cryo tube, and then the Sentinels and the main bad guys you fight in Doom are kind of like the Didact and the Guardians in Halo, and the Master Chief was the Redeemer, kind of like the Doom Slayer. Now this is just a symptom of genericism. Both Halo and Doom have both kind of normalized a lot of storytelling techniques and story elements in first-person shooters that have then gone off to, be used in a bunch of other games. But both of these games were pretty revolutionary for their time, and thus the things that they used have now become tropes, but are actually tied to these original games. It's not like I'm accusing Doom of copying Halo or anything, but it does make me want a Halo game where the Master Chief is just pissed about Cortana or something and goes slaying Bad Covenant in the Flood and just, rips and tears through them. Like that would be a fun game. Like I hope Halo Infinite is even remotely the quality of experience that you get out of Doom Eternal. And actually there was even, speaking of Halo references, there was even a finish the fight reference in Doom as well. One thing that I like that apparently some people are disagreeing on, but that I like a lot, is there is a lot less of the forced exposition or constant dialogue that Doom 2016 has. In my opinion, this is good. I'd rather spend more time on the action than my ears being raked by the overmodulated voices of Vega and Dr. What is his name? Dr. Samuel Hayden. That's his name. Dr. Hayden. I love their voice, but it is overmodulated. And Doom 2016, it just felt like there were people always talking and you couldn't skip it. Now, there were some cool jokes in there. Doom 2016 was kind of like a parody or a satire of first-person shooter stories that had come before it. That, you know, they all had these specific tropes, and they were kind of stepping on those tropes, being like, we're Doom, we don't need that. You're saying this thing's gonna help me, I'm gonna break it before it helps me, yada yada. And it was kind of cool, but I don't think that would have made sense in the second game. And actually, there was the Waypoint Radio podcast. I found this through a Vice article. They were actually saying that Doom learned the wrong lessons, or it learned the wrong lessons from Doom 2016, and that they didn't include some of that stuff, which they felt made it Doom. And I feel like the opposite. Like, I felt like that was a good way for Doom to come back, but I don't think that was necessary for Doom's actual identity. And if anything, Doom Eternal builds off of that even better. It's kind of like how with Deadpool, you couldn't just have Deadpool and then Deadpool 2 be the same as Deadpool. A lot of those same jokes and approaches would have just gotten really old in a second game. And had Doom Eternal had the same exposition and constant talking and all of that, even with those jokes in there that Doom 2016 had, it would have been a very tiring experience. And instead they approached it in different ways. There are still hilarious moments, like when Dr. Hayden is telling you can't just shoot a hole through Mars, and Doomsayer's like, fuck you, I'm doing it.
You can't just shoot a hole into the surface of Mars.
The portal is ready.
Like, that's freaking great. And there was even a line in Doom 2016. They had some really sassy loading screens, and one of the loading screens said, Dr. Samuel Hayden can assist you. If you need it, you don't. And it was one of those throwaway lines that they then referenced in this game, because Vega literally says, the only person who can assist us is Dr. Samuel Hayden.
We will require assistance in order to locate the final Hell Priest. I believe Dr. Hayden can help us with our search. I will calibrate the portal to the Ark's command station.
And it's just lots of those, like, I think it's maybe a bit more abstracted or detached kind of jokes, but it's still meta jokes and jokes about the formula and things like that, that in my opinion work really well. And I don't think you need quite as much of the exposition and the slow walking that you had in the previous game. And IMO, they did it very much right here. They very much focused on the gameplay and the mechanics, getting you into the arenas to shoot and rip and tear. They got rid of the pistol. You just start with a shotgun, moves so much quicker that way. This is a game where you carry all the guns. So you have like 8 different guns. You don't reload, you just pick up ammo and keep shooting. It is way faster paced than most shooters. You've got a secondary fire, which can be homing missiles or a scope for precision shooting, locking on for the rockets, things like that. You've got advanced mobility that is still in a classic sense. Like, it builds off of the classic idea of like bunny hopping and, you know, weird jumping strats, in that you get a double jump, you get a double dash, you get a wall climb on certain walls, which does feel a bit out of place, but it works, I guess. You've got an extended dash if you pick up the floating dash power up that recharges your dash. You've got a freaking meat hook on the super shotgun, which allows you to hook people and fly, and cool stuff there. And the tech allows for some really crazy stuff once the speedrunners and the, you know, the people who look for exploits get into it. Like, there's already been this crazy super jump, and there's already speedrunners getting out of the map and doing cool skips and things like that. So there's a lot of super advanced stuff that you may find. Most shooters these days take advanced mobility and put in sprinting and cover-based stuff and, you know, quick thruster packs. This is all about shooting all the time and just dodging and circle strafing and strafe jumping, not the weird mechanics that Halo has started to introduce and that Call of Duty has and things like that. It proves that this classic true arena shooter action still works in 2020. I don't think every game should be that, and I don't think this kind of game is for everyone, but this style of game can definitely still work. And it makes me kind of sad that Quake Champions as a multiplayer game doesn't feel this good. I feel like they need to revisit Quake after this game instead of just popping out another Doom game, because then they're just going to keep, you know, pushing it into the ground. They need to take this mechanical feel, kind of how Apex Legends took from Titanfall. They need to take this great mechanical gunplay feel and movement tech feel and put that back into Quake, polish Quake up, make it more fun, because currently Quake's not in that same place. Fights do get really insane, really intense, and especially since I played through my campaign on ultra violence difficulty, It's basically felt like I was playing like an RTS with the APM actions per minute that I was pulling off during some of the fights, especially at the end of the game, where it was just a maze pushing you to your limits of what you could play. I'm sitting here juggling all 8 weapons, 2 different grenade types, a melee weapon, your flamethrower, you're swapping weapon mods, you are jumping on the spin pulls, the little monkey bars, you got your blood punches and your glory kills and your chainsaw and your sword. There's a lot you're juggling all at once, and you need to use your entire arsenal at your disposal in order to survive a fight. Nevertheless, do cool stuff with it. There's also a I'm not going to say very advanced, but a leveling system that goes further than last time. You've got your weapon mods, you've got levels to those weapon mods, masteries of those weapon mods, you've got suit mods that you have different points you can unlock for, secondary suit mods, which affect your actual health and armor stats and things like that, and then you have runes, which give you just extra different abilities depending on which 3 you have equipped. There are different challenges you can complete throughout each level, which will get you extra suit points and things like that, and you can actually have more points than the total number of suit points that you can have. So like right now, I finished the game, I've unlocked everything in my suit, my Praetor suit wheel, and yet I still have extra points to spend. I'm hoping there's some DLC or future expansion where I get to spin those, because otherwise it seems like I wasted some of my batteries in the ship. You can actually unlock stuff early in your ship by finding the ship batteries, the Sentinel batteries, throughout each level. They're one of the secrets that you find for the exploration points, and then you bring them back, and it costs 2 per little unlock thing, and you can unlock an extra weapon modifier, drone thing, or you can unlock an extra Praetor suit point, or an extra suit modifier, different things like that. And so you can actually unlock it early and give yourself an easier time, which was very important for my higher difficulty playthrough. Again, I didn't play on Nightmare or anything like that, but it was still more than the normal difficulty. The game works you up to each new concept of the mechanics and of the game and of the enemies and things like that throughout each level, so that you can, best learn how to use it before it throws more at you. This is a very classic approach. Instead of just having a tutorial or something like that for most things, it just introduces it to you slowly and then lets you build up to it over time, and it works really freaking well and feels way better than a lot of the more slower paced games that do the more tutorial approach, as it goes. There are some bosses that end up turning into just regular kind of higher tier mobs that you fight, and then there is some mobs that you just kind of fight the same way every time. That does start to feel stale. So for example, you have the floaty guy whose name I'm forgetting, I'll have it on screen. You shoot him with a sticky bomb while his mouth's open, he swallows it, explodes, and then you can glory kill him. And that just seems like the only way you should ever treat that guy without wasting a lot of ammo every time he shows up, especially since you can have hordes and hordes of them in the middle of a giant fight. Instead of letting them do damage to you or wasting ammo on them, you just hit them with the sticky bomb, hit another one with the sticky bomb, glory kill that one, jump through that one, glory kill the next one. There's not a whole lot of variety with certain enemy types like that that have to be killed or can easily be killed in certain specific ways, which you do learn early on. However, you still are worked up through these, and you still handle them much better the further you get into the game and the more experience you have. And I was talking with my buddy BBK Dragoon, and what your gameplay even looks like when you're at the start of the game compared to the end of the game, it's just remarkable how drastically different those 2 different play styles are from when you're first getting used to it versus just fighting waves and waves and waves of enemies. All of this applies to everything except kind of the actual bosses that you fight. The bosses have a kind of Dark Souls-like parry and tell setup where you need to strictly follow that. The game tells you what you need to do to beat the boss, like the Marauder. You need to wait for his eyes to turn green and shoot him, and that's the only real way you can beat him for the most part. And that just starts to feel a little out of place, and some of the bosses can be really annoying to deal with. And so it sets you up, I don't know, it's one of those things. The bosses are set up that way, and they have certain tells and things you need to do that I never would actually think to do. I'm not someone who enjoys the Dark Souls games because I don't want to die 50 times just to find out what that one little tell about this boss is in order to beat him and then exploit that over and over. And so they tell you what that is up front, and then you have to do it, but they're still kind of annoying to do. Like the Marauder, for example, the battle axe guy, at least on ultra violence, he doesn't really stagger. The way you're supposed to beat him is keep him at mid-range. His eyes turn green when he's about to swing on you. You shoot him with something, probably the super shotgun, and he staggers, and then you can do more damage. On my playthrough, I maybe saw him stagger a total of once, and it wasn't during his actual boss fight, just when he was in with another enemy type. He never staggered. Apparently he staggers regularly on normal difficulty. On mine, he never staggered. I spent 20 times trying to fight him as a normal boss and could not beat him, because even if I'm shooting him point blank with the super shotgun while he's, you know, supposed to get staggered, he's still swinging on me and taking most of my health while he's still taking damage from the shot, but he's not staggering, he's still hitting me. And I have no way to avoid that, because if I try to like predict when his tail is gonna happen, then it doesn't happen. Like, even if he's about to swing, if his eyes haven't turned green yet and I'm going ahead and trying to pre-fire, his shield immediately comes up, and you can't use the crucible on him later in the game because he always blocks it. Like, there was just later on in the game, I was able to use the frag grenade with the extra explosion and rocket splash damage and things like that to mostly take his health away without actually even following that strict path. But during the boss fight, I literally could not beat him, and I was getting closer and closer, but then I got lucky in that after I reloaded my save at one point, as soon as I reloaded the save, I went to shoot a mob and he literally dashes through the ship and out into space, and then it opened the portal for me. He just completely yeeted off the ship. So I got really lucky that he bugged out there, but there's a lot of weird bugs that I've encountered like this that I'll touch on in a little bit. As far as exploration and the map design goes, so we have the mechanics. Those feel really tight and nice for the most part. The map design, for the most part, is completely top-notch. It feels phenomenal. The map design is incredible for this arena-style combat. There's a lot to do, a lot of movement tech that it allows with the grav lifts and the monkey bars, which do feel a little out of place. The different areas to jump through, you got your extra lives you could pick up or find little supercharges and things like that to keep yourself going. I never figured out what the blue skulls did. They never seemed to do anything for me, but I still picked them up during certain fights nonetheless. And overall, it felt pretty great. Exploration was not as great as I would like it to have been, because mainly because there were plenty of sections where I felt like I could find a way to like cheese myself to another spot. Like, I can see a path over here. I'm fairly confident I at least want to test and see if my double dash will actually reach it, especially when you go back to the earlier missions after picking up the power-ups, which is what you did in classic games. You beat levels, you get extra power-ups, you go back to the earlier games, and then you can do things you couldn't do previously in those levels. I wanted to go do that and kept trying to reach places, and there's lots of little parts of the map that look like you should be able to get to, and there's invisible walls and chunks that just make it to where you can't climb or anything like that. So instead of having this sense of you can go anywhere and do anything, you can do a whole heck of a lot and feel really good while you're doing it within this confined space, but any exploration outside of that is completely restricted, and that feels a little disappointing. And the secrets throughout the levels feel somehow less secret than they did in the original Doom 2016. And maybe this is because I'm more familiar with Automap. I was actually looking for them as I played, but you have these things that are very clearly like cracked walls that you break through, and for the most part you see the secrets 9 times out of 10. You actually see the secrets just playing the game regularly, and it just becomes a chore to figure out the puzzle of how to actually reach it instead of just actually discovering it through exploration. And so that did disappoint me a little bit. But overall, the environments are freaking amazing. There are some beautiful hellscapes, unique environments, some really wonderful design that I'm glad I got to see and I wanted to share with you here. The visuals are just stunning all around. The new graphics tech they have put into this are beautiful. And I wasn't even running on the highest settings. I was running on Ultra, but there are 2 other settings past Ultra that I may play around with for capturing for this video, since I only need 60 FPS footage and not 100. So we'll see about that. I did feel that the wall climbing aspect was a little silly. It felt a little out of place. It definitely added some extra variety to the movement throughout the just normal map navigation in this game. But I felt like there was just some artificial difficulties shoved in there by the platforming not being challenging, but just not working how it's supposed to sometimes. Sometimes if you bump, you run into the walls that you can climb, it will automatically grab it for you and you're good to go. But don't rely on that, because sometimes you'll bump into it and it won't auto grab for you and you'll have to hit it. Sometimes it'll pop up asking you to press it to grab it, you're close enough, and it just doesn't grab it. And sometimes it just, like, you see a path of where you're supposed to jump, and you can do it one time, and then the next time it just feels like your jumps aren't reaching as far as they're supposed to. And it just feels like some really artificial difficulty that really frustrated me, because I would, go into what I know was about to be a fight with full health and shields, and then end up losing most of it from dying, falling and dying, and you lose chunks of your armor or health through that, all before I got to the encounter. And then I was starting the encounters much more weak than I would have normally started. That part was just really frustrating, and it slowed the pace down a lot. It might have been my least favorite aspect of the game. After you finish each of your levels, or at least quite a few of the levels, you get to come back and chill in your Fortress of Doom, which is this flying moon slash spaceship thing. It is very similar to the ship you have in Warframe, which is something I absolutely love about Warframe, and it's something that I really think they had over Destiny. It was really freaking cool. You don't get manual customization over it like you do in Warframe. In Warframe, you can put stuff up wherever you want. The ship, it fills itself out automatically in Doom Eternal, but it is freaking massive. It's like as big as a normal game level itself. And different, music albums and posters that you find will put themselves on the wall. You've got big shelves for all of your toys that you find throughout the level. You've got a sick triple monitor gaming setup, as well as a retro gaming station that lets you play the entirety of Doom and Doom 2 in real time, like the actual game. Pretty crazy. You've got a workshop. I mean, most of this you can't interact with. There's lots of little levels to unlock the weapon mods and the Praetor suit points. There are secrets through it that I haven't even begun to figure out how to get to some of them because they're just so high up. There's lots of weird stuff like that. There's books on the bookshelves with references to Dota, Black Mesa. You've got Dork Norkum instead of Duke Nukem. There's a to pray or not to pray. Come on, Bethesda, just release Prey 2 already. A lot of cool stuff in there, and he's even building a giant Doom guy, like mecha suit, a giant, Gundam Doom guy. I was really disappointed that to fight the final boss, we didn't get into a giant Doom guy mech to fight him. That would have been pretty cool. So there's a lot of good stuff going for it, and frankly, it's a hard game, but in a way that feels really satisfying. And I know people say this about a lot of games, especially I had already brought up the Souls games. And I'm not comparing this to Dark Souls. I'm not going to be the guy that's like, this is the Dark Souls of shooters, because no, it's not. But it was really challenging and really satisfying when I beat a lot of the stuff that I beat. It wasn't one of those, oh, I got through it, now I'm frustrated, which is what I experienced with Souls and Bloodborne and probably Sekiro. Is it just feels like grueling punishment until it's over, and then I'm like, yay, it's over, why did I do that? Whereas this was super freaking satisfying because it was just challenging mechanically, not challenging. I don't know, there's a difference for me. The bosses all have different kind of interesting mechanics as far as how you beat them. Like I mentioned, you have your parry and your tail system, and they have different shields you have to break in a certain way, or you got to shoot the base and then let that explode and then you fight them, or you have to stagger them, which doesn't seem to work in Ultraviolence. And you have to juggle mobs while you're beating them. And then there's the Con Maker boss, where you have to drain their shields and then meat hook up to them and blood punch them, which was so freaking cool. But again, those are things that I would have never figured out on my own. If this was a Souls game with the same bosses, I would have gotten to those bosses and just given up. The Marauder I basically was about to give up on anyway. Game fixed it for me. What else was there? The Doom Slayer? No, the Slayer Hunter? The Slayer Hunter has the shields that you shoot with the plasma rifle, and then you blow out its base, and then you fight it again. It would have taken me a while. I probably would have figured out that you can break its shields with the plasma thing. The Con Maker one, like, I would have just kept shooting it and wondered why the hell it's not breaking. Like, I would have never thought to just meat hook and punch it every time. These things that it tells you up front what to do, and that feels like it's taken away from the experience because that's so unlike the rest of the Doom experience that you had for most of the game. But I don't know what else I would have done. So I guess I'm glad that it did tell me, because I just don't have the patience for that. It mostly felt fine, other than the Marauder, which, fuck the Marauder. And I couldn't even use the Crucible on him. He's the only boss that you encounter later in the game. Any of the bosses that you encounter later in the game as a high tier mob that you can't use the Crucible on. Maybe if you completely stagger him first, you can cut him down with the Crucible. But I couldn't even get him to stagger. Fuck the Marauder. If you die a bunch on a particular boss or level, you do end up getting, or at least on certain of them. I never got it on the Marauder, so maybe it depends on which level or boss you're on. But at least on the higher difficulties, if you die a bunch, you get the option to load your checkpoint with Sentinel Armor, which for that specific fight helps reduce incoming damage, which is a nice little bonus when you're really struggling with a particular part. The difficulty mostly felt fine. It scaled with me. It didn't feel too challenging at any point. I saw someone complaining about the difficulty spiking with bosses. I did not feel that at all, other than a particular Slayer Gate where I'm making my way through. I'm trying to do full completion. Every time I find a Slayer Gate, I'm going to find it, and then I find a Slayer Gate at one particular level, and it has multiple Cyber Demons or Barons, the really big guys. I don't remember which one. I just immediately died and left. Before you actually encounter them in the game. So the game hadn't actually told you how to beat them. You've never seen them before in this game, and it just throws multiple of them at you. that was a huge spike in the Slayer Gate difficulty, and I just stopped going for them after that point. I'll go back to them now. That was weird. I did feel very, very challenged. It did push me to my limits, especially at the end, but it felt really good. It wasn't too much. It only got super frustrating at a couple points, and once I got through them, I was glad that I did. I didn't feel like I wanted to stop at that point. There were random instances, especially with the Death Totem or the demon whose name I'm already forgetting, that basically acted as a buff totem, not a death totem, a buff totem for the demons, where as soon as I entered the level, they'd just all run like triple speed at me and get me into a corner and basically punch me to death. And there's literally no way I could have fought out of that. That gets really annoying. And those kinds of instances completely drain all of my extra lives, which are really annoying because then I just have to load the checkpoints without the extra lives. I feel cheated in those instances, but otherwise it's fine. I'm really happy I played on Ultraviolence because it was just challenging enough. I don't think I would have enjoyed it if I played through on Nightmare. I don't see playing a game on the hardest difficulty as the right way to do it for a story play. I think that you want to be challenged, but you don't want it to be super challenging because then that takes away from really taking in the full game for the first playthrough. That's something you kind of go back and play through later. The final boss is, and I've spoiled everything already at this point, the final boss is basically something straight out of God of War, which is pretty cool, and that's something I usually see in a shooter. You're fighting a giant Titan dude who's infinitely bigger than your size, and you're breaking chunks of his armor off over time, and then you're destroying parts of his body over time. I was disappointed that I didn't get to play it like God of War, and that I didn't get to actually hit him with this Crucible sword. There were so many Crucible points to help you deal with the mobs. It would have been cool if while he was, smashing down, just like in God of War, I get to run up with the Crucible and start chopping at his hand. And I was, like I said, I was disappointed we didn't fight him with the giant mech Doom guy that he was building in the fortress, but it was still pretty cool. I don't know if it hit the mark that they were going for with it. It was a little weird. The Crucible didn't feel like it had as much focus as it should have, but it was pretty great. The experience was nearly perfect, but I did encounter some bugs. Sometimes weapon sounds on the heavy assault rifle just kind of got quiet. At one point during a mission, I was climbing up a wall climbing part and the sound just completely cut out. I had to cancel my checkpoint and relaunch the game. When you're playing in HDR, the auto map is completely dark. It's very hard to see. I just assumed that's the way it was supposed to be, although I was confused why it was so dark in this game compared to Doom 2016. But then loading it up in non-HDR mode, and it's an entirely different experience using the auto map compared to how I was playing in HDR. So that's broken. And then, as I mentioned, it kept turning off my Windows HDR setting, which meant when I relaunched the game, it flickered like hell because it's trying to run in HDR and couldn't, and for whatever reason that was causing flickering. Whatever. Sometimes whenever I was encountering demons from the buff totem or from the Archvile, that's his name, which is basically a demon form of the buff totem, the demons that he summons just kind of stop in place and bug out. They didn't T-pose, but they were just kind of frozen in place until I hit them once, and then they'd all activate at once, or it would be random, and that was clearly not how it was supposed to play. The other bug of the Marauder eating off the ship, he just yeeted out. That was weird. I don't know if that was him just giving up on me as a fighter. I don't know. I've had friends mention that they can just clip their walls sometimes on accident, and sometimes I'd be fighting an enemy and right when I was supposed to get the glory kill, they just kind of disappeared. Weird little bugs, stuff I'm sure they're gonna fix, but that's it. In conclusion, I want to say that Doom Eternal is the perfect story shooter, or if not, it is very close. I've not played the multiplayer yet, just wanted to finish the story, get my collector's edition unboxed, and make this before I dig into battle mode and things like that. It seems like a totally different experience. I know that there are some people out there that prefer the Call of Duty / military style shooter, and they want something that's, faster paced in a different sense and has different mechanics, and this is a lot to keep up with. It is a very intense and in some ways exhausting game to play because of just how much there is to juggle and work with. But for what it is, I think Hugo Martin and their team are geniuses. They have truly figured out what Doom is. This is a great step up above Doom 2016. And they have really, really done it. If you have any inkling towards arena shooters or Doom as a concept or horror shooters or whatever, definitely give it a go. They built the story out of what in 2016 felt like it was just a parody. Doom 2016 felt like it was just a parody of other shooters. And I was kind of concerned of what they would do with other games. And they took that and they even tied in the older Doom games somehow. I haven't figured out how the lore is supposed to work yet, but they tied in all the older games. So it's not just a reboot, it's also a sequel, and tied it into an actual package story that seems to work, which is pretty cool. Thank you so much to their team. I am disappointed in lack of mod support like last time. That is kind of disappointing, but the game is super worth it. Just huge thanks to id Software and their team. Bethesda themselves are not doing so hot in terms of PR at the moment, but Doom's pretty good, and I'm super stoked. And if you're wanting more Doom action, check out the mod for Serious Sam, Serious Doom. Looks pretty cool. Thank you for watching my Doom Eternal review. I know this has been incredibly long. Keep playing Doom. Download it if you haven't already. Just stay home, wash your hands, don't come into contact with other people.
Rip and tear.
Oh, that is really hard to get off my head. They did not think about removal very much with that. And this, you can't breathe in it.